We're back here again, are we? Well, I've already covered plenty of cartoons that aired on it, defying the myth that once Lizzie McGuire hit the scene, they gave up on TV animation. But with the possible exception of The Proud Family, these shows have been good, but not heavy hitters in the way Disney cartoons are today. I like them, there's a special place in my heart for them, but I need to show a main attraction, one of their biggest animated hits of the decade, one that just about stormed popular culture and showed its audience it could do anything. But this is Disney Channel, surely finding a show like that would be impossible. Some of my earliest TV memories were of watching Kim Possible, an action cartoon about a heroic teenage girl who cheerleads by day and saves the world by night. Although I was too young to understand or follow continuity at the time it was airing new episodes, I liked the characters, the action, and the individual situations. It certainly did its job at giving young girls an idol, but it made young boys like me respect them and their strength more. I owe a lot of debt to cartoons for entertaining me and making me a nicer person growing up, and Kim Possible is the one that comes to mind when I think of great shows that did both at once. Now, how did it come to be? We need to go back to the height of the Disney Renaissance for this one, and two writers at Walt Disney Television Animation, Bob Schooley and Mark McCorkle. They'd spent most of the late 80s and early 90s floating around the TV animation industry, working in the sound department on shows like Ninja Turtles, The Super Mario Super Show, and Captain Planet, before staying in one place with Disney. They slowly rose up the ranks through Goof Troop and Bonkers, and got their lucky break in 1994, being part of the screenwriting team for the sequel to Aladdin, The Return of Jafar. Sure, Disney direct-to-video sequels don't have the hottest prestige, at least they didn't before the company's new money-making venture, but writing a continuation to one of the biggest animated hits of the decade isn't an opportunity you get more than once. Unless you're Bob Schooley and Mark McCorkle. Aladdin and the King of Thieves, The Lion King 2, Simba's Pride, the Aladdin cartoon, the Hercules cartoon, and last but not least, Buzz Lightyear of Star Command. Based on the Buzz Lightyear franchise within the Toy Story franchise, Star Command was a big hit for ABC and kept Toy Story's popularity pumping into the 2000s. I have heard rumors that the director of Toy Story, John Lasseter, didn't like the show they made, but he also didn't like giving animators personal space, so yeah. Back to Disney TV animation, Bob and Mark liked working on Star Command, but wanted to make their own IP for a change, and create a heroine that their daughters could look up to. They actually thought of the names and attributes of the main characters in an elevator. Mark McCorkle said, Kim Possible. She can do anything. Bob Schooley said, Ron's stoppable. He can't. And so, a legend was born. If that's the same elevator Kingdom Hearts was conceptualized in, I'd be so happy. The rest of the cast kind of bloomed from there, the main idea and 60s spy influence being so solid. But what's a Disney cartoon without a little star power? Even Steven's co-lead, Christine Carlson Romano, was brought in to voice Kim, and the older brother from Boy Meets World, Will Friedle, was picked for Ron. Taj Mowry from Smart Guy played their assistant Wade, Raven-Symoné herself played Monique, Nancy Cartwright of The Replacements fame played Rufus. Point is, they had a Rolodex and weren't afraid to use it. Kim Possible premiered on Disney Channel on June 7th, 2002, with 3 episodes in a row, and continued to pump out episodes regularly up to spring 2005. It consistently remained the channel's top-rated cartoon amongst all demographics, and was a merchandising machine in the mid-2000s, getting books, video games, and home releases. It probably wasn't as big a hit as the Powerpuff Girls, but it achieved a similar level of acclaim for its animation and writing. Only one thing stood in its way: syndication. They hit 65 episodes, which was a standard television speed cap at the time, and Disney didn't really feel like renewing Kim Possible after it hit that number. You see, this is where fan demand comes in. They proved that the show had such a passionate following that Disney eventually decided to give it one more season for 2007, and it ended at 87 episodes and a complete story on September 7th of that year. So it was already the longest running Disney cartoon of its time, running 5 near continuous years from 2002 to 2007. So basically the whole decade. but it's remained a very popular show through all this time since, finally getting the live action treatment in 2019. Even though Bob and Mark returned for it, I've heard it's a pretty subpar movie in its own right, so I'll stick with the animated canon for this review. Currently you can watch every episode on Disney+, but watch it while you can. I've heard it's jumping ship to Oaxis soon.
It's criminal. Someone at Club Banana is in major style denial.
In the busy American city of Middleton resides the world's most famous crime-fighting hero. 15-year-old Kim Possible can do pretty much anything, with a little trouble. Balancing school life, family life, and saving the world is pretty hard. She largely manages to get through it with her best friend Ron Stoppable, a clumsy dude who'll always stick by her no matter what. Plenty of their adversaries will do anything to get back up and fight Kim another day, to the point where some of them become evil mutuals in their battles across land, sea, air, and into the stars. So on paper, it's a standard action drama with the twist that the main characters are teenagers, but with a series like this, characters are everything. Kim is a lot of things, smart, agile, and just, but isn't totally immune from frustration. She does get into trouble at school and isn't especially popular despite her busy life. Something I noticed while watching is that, while she can show fear, she never screams. I imagine they had a list of things she would and wouldn't do, which is a good sign they cared about her characterization just as much as her role in each story. Her BFF Ron is a wild and goofy slacker, and a bit of a scaredy cat social outcast, but as long as he isn't in a position of power, he's very friendly towards Kim. For the first 2 seasons, there's no romance between them, but they do start getting more serious about a relationship near the end of season 3. They are great for each other, but there was something sweet about their dynamic when it was platonic. Not that I don't like that they hooked up. Ron's other best friend is Rufus, his pet mole rat who looks a lot cuter than real-life mole rats, and acts a lot sharper and funnier too. Many bits are made out of how he can outshine his human peers in some areas, plus he's really loyal and useful when brought into missions. Those missions are usually sent to them by Wade, a 10-year-old computer genius who almost never leaves his room. For a while, he only appears for a minute per episode on average, but they managed to make him a fleshed out character. You can tell he's been friends with Kim and Ron for a long time. Some girls Kim hangs out with are Monique, a good friend of hers who works in resale and fashion. Poor Raven, her show hasn't even premiered yet, and she's already typecast as a fashion lover. Jokes aside, Monique's a good character, and so is Bonnie, the selfish lead of the cheerleading squad, always making Kim feel bad for herself. She sounds mean, and trust me, she is, but seeing her get into issues herself sometimes does mix in some fun. Ron also runs into Mr. Barkin a lot, a big, stern man who always fails to get Ron to straighten up and fly right. Casting Patrick Warburton as Barkin was a stroke of genius. His vocal performance is the very definition of commanding and hilarious. The families are pretty good too. Kim's mother Anne is a brain surgeon, and her father James is a rocket scientist. It's good to see cartoon parents who aren't bumbling dopes, though 2002 was really the year of parents nonchalantly letting their kids go on dangerous adventures. They're funny and friendly, but most importantly, good role models. Kim has little brothers too, Jim and Tim Possible, who like causing mischief and are also very interested in rocket science. Expect ensuing mayhem and take the appropriate safety precautions. This is a near-perfect family, and I think it has to do with the surname Possible boosting their confidence. Maybe that's why the Stoppable family's a lot more bland. Mrs. Stoppable is certainly, but Mr. manages to be a little more interesting. He's an actuary, he can work anywhere. Oh, you really want me to talk about Larry? He's kinda decent. I like the geekiness, but it's a good thing they held off making whole stories out of him for a while. He's one of those small doses characters. There's enough good guys for now. I really want to get to the villains because they are amazing. Dr. Draken is a mad scientist, and James Possible's former high school mutual, fueled in part by revenge towards other scientists. But otherwise, he's pretty bad at his job, and his henchmen aren't much better. His assistant Shigo not only remains the best character on the show, but is a more competent supervillain, Kim's equal in combat, and makes up one half of this bickering odd couple dynamic. With anyone but John DiMaggio and Nicole Sullivan, 2 villains arguing for half their screen time wouldn't be that exciting, but Draken's such a loony, unpredictable goofball, and Shigo's such a realistic straight woman, that it's always a blast to watch. Another dynamic duo is the Senior Seniors, Senior 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 and Senior Senior Junior. Bear with me. They're a rich Hispanic father and son duo who have a lot of time, money, and evil plans to spend it on. Senior's your standard cartoon billionaire, but Junior's vain, full of himself, and dying to be a teen pop sensation. I don't think I need to go any deeper, it's clear why they're such fun characters. Monkey Fist is pretty funny too, a British zoologist who's gone in over his head for simian legends and artifacts, and also Ron's greatest adversary, since he has a fear of monkeys. It's great to see that this is what he's up against and what he uses to face it. Also, there's Duff Killigan, an evil Scotsman who loves a destructive game of golf. He isn't used often, and for good reason, his gimmick is very niche, but they did squeeze some good bits out of him, and that's what you need with a villain this weird, good bits. Now, who could forget Professor Dementor? I did. I wasn't a fan of his plots or voice, as hard as Patton Oswalt tries. I don't hate him, but I feel like the only thing he had over Draken was explosives. Onto some of the bad guys introduced later on. Motorhead is a dude brah who's into radical vehicles. While not one of my favourites, he's pretty annoying at points and his environment isn't one that specifically appeals to me. I like his chemistries with other characters, especially Draken due to how weird it is. Camille Leon is a high-profile celebrity with shape-shifting powers that she uses to get even more wealthy. I like her, but she was introduced a little late for her to feel like a really important one. I couldn't care less for her cat though. The last I'll bring up is Warmonger, an Amazonian alien who's pretty stereotypical but genuinely threatening. No wonder they used her and her species as the main antagonists for the finale. I think that's enough characters for now. I guess you can tell by now that it's a cast I really enjoy watching. It's clear that they were well thought out and always used properly, and whatever developments were made in them were made with benefiting them in mind.
Sorry, KP, but discovering that your action here was a big fake is not something you just get over.
And this from a wrestling fan?
I don't get the connection.
Now, this should be a given for shows about double lives, but I found the balance of these two different sides of Kim's life to be perfect, especially when they highlight their similarities and differences. A recurring formula in the early episodes is that Kim or Ron would face some sort of issue at school or home, which would later be comparable to something the villain's going through. For instance, if Kim's getting a little too controlling, the villain's plot will involve mind control. It gives them something to learn by showing how that sort of behavior can be used for world domination. It's a little heavy-handed, but they're teenagers. Better to adventure through these morality tales now before it's too late. The show started out largely episodic, but the plot got more in-depth as it went on. Middleton High gets tougher over the years, and its sign funnier, and the villains mingle more often, making bigger evil plans over time. It gets hard to figure out which side will eventually overtake their lives. They're both such massive priorities. Character development is taken rather seriously, especially as the story progresses and gets less episodic, but the tone of the show is always pretty silly. The villains are threatening but fun, and a lot of parts of the world were designed to be humorous. The video game brand they have has a mascot that's certainly Japanese, the wrestling personalities are just as weird as they are in real life, and the discount store Ron goes to has a giant brain for a mascot. Just because they're making an action show doesn't mean they can't make a comedy show at the same time. The one problem I can see people having with the dialogue is the use of teen slang. It added flavor at the time, but now clearly dates the show to the 2000s, if the designs of the technology don't already, that is. Usually I don't really mind the lingo used, but teenagers don't really use lingo like spankin' or booyah anymore, so I can't exactly say the show is timeless. It's not patronizing or anything, it's just an unfortunate example that the series is nearly 20 years old. But really, why shouldn't a show about teenagers reflect the time period it was made in? It's a window to how kids their age dealt with issues like fashion and peer pressure in the 2000s, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that if you look at it that way. Speaking of being a clear reflection of the times, Kim Possible's animation has a very 2000s look and feel. The character and clothing designs are sleek and curvy, and so well done that I thought the creators were fashion designers before getting into animation. The backgrounds and general atmosphere are also really good, going for a retro-modern hybrid mentality that works well with the props and characters. I believe this was among the first cartoons to be made in high definition too, but like other early to mid-2000s examples of the format, it's not like you needed an HDTV to get the full experience. Glaring textures can sometimes be an issue in HD though. They weren't even in a majority of American households until 2 years after the show ended, but it's still worth noting. Something you'll notice is that the quality of movement stays pretty good, but not Disney movie level throughout the whole run, particularly in the fight scenes, which are always well staged and choreographed. There's even a directing credit in the title sequence, which is amazing. That's how much pride they showed in the presentation. All in all, the experience of watching Kim Possible is pretty retro now, but good design work and directing never goes outdated.
Wait up!
This is a pretty smart first season, in that while yes it focuses on introductions to characters, locations and themes, it's never overbearing with them. They just naturally fall into Kim and Ron's lives. They get into their first battles with the Seniors and Monkey Fist around this time, and it's very clear they're gonna be the ones who'll recur throughout the show. There's some other one-off villains throughout the year that didn't stick around for very long. Gil the Lake Monster perhaps, but he's only got one more appearance after this. As I said, there's a lot of effort in making sure the troubles the characters face in their normal lives and extraordinary ones intertwine. And the great thing is, I can still remember a ton of great episodes and moments from this season, even after the end. As you'll see, I don't think this show ever went downhill, but it did like to change things up, whether you were prepared or not.
Excuse me, scary orb thing? Where are you taking us?
The Attitude Adjustment Center.
Isn't that the high school?
Prepare to be drained of all individuality and spirit.
Yep, high school.
Season 2's main job was choosing areas of the show with potential and focusing and expanding on them. And expanding is right when you see that big 31 episode order they got. Not to mention, they started making a couple 11-minute episodes, which made for even more adventures, even though they aren't usually the best the show has to offer. It's easily the longest season of the show, and I really don't get why Disney shows keep getting one extra long season. It tends to throw my analyses off balance because, of course, the longer one's gonna have more good episodes. But this is a case where I don't consider it the best. That comes later. Not to say that the growth this season made was bad, it's just harder to figure out what exact strengths they were going for. Over at Middleton High, Kim and Ron graduate sophomore grade and become juniors, but apart from Monique and Bonnie, we see a little less from their peers. Kim's original love interest, Josh Mankey, gets phased out, and Tyra, who took an interest in Ron, gives up trying to be noticed. Sad really, but they're narrowing their choices for the eventual Kim and Ron hookup. That is except for Yuri, a foreign exchange student who takes Ron to Japan so he can learn to harness his monkey powers, and so she can giggle at his American-style jokes. That joke in itself gets tired, but Yuri's a wrinkle in the plot they sit on ironing out just for now. Another ally introduced is Felix the Wheelchair Whiz. I thought I'd bring him up because he's the first impaired kid I've seen in a Disney cartoon who isn't a total dick. Plus his debut, where Kim has to learn not to underestimate him, is really well written. We learn a little more about Draken and Shigo too. While Kim, Ron and Rufus's backstories are largely saved for the show's first TV movie, A Sitch in Time. There's a time monkey statue that the bad guys use to go back to Kim's first day of kindergarten and bully her, and we learn why she likes Ron. Then they go to her first mission several years later, and we learn why she started doing anything. Just a boastful babysitting webpage emailed by mistake. That's pretty funny. There's a lot to dive into with A Sitch in Time, with Shigo hatching a plot to take over the internet before the .com bubble burst, and then sending Ron's family away to hurt his friendship with Kim. It's a pretty complicated movie, and it all ends with a reset button anyway, but the main takeaway from me was the amazing scope and animation. I do really like this movie, but it's pretty hard for me to explain why.
Thank you! You're too kind.
Please tell me we can leave now.
Forget it! I'm on fire tonight.
Whoever said quantity meant quality? This season's only 13 episodes long, counting the movie, but it's my favorite of the show. The seeds for Kim and Ron's future relationship are planted, we get to see more human sides of Bonnie and Barker, and a lot of the plot ideas are really fun and well executed. The Lilo and Stitch crossover aired around this time, which was fun but a little cliched and inessential, but the second TV movie, So the Drama, is a lot better. Kim falls for a new kid called Eric, played by Ricky Ullman, who turns out to be a spy from Draken trying to get information about her weaknesses. But what ends up happening is they chip away at Ron's weaknesses, making him jealous of the spy, shutting down Bueno Nacho, etc, etc. Draken also breaks into James Possible's lab and steals information to make an army of evil fast food toys. Again, pretty weird, but there's a lot of moving parts to make it an action-packed ride, and I appreciate the more adult moments. The original audience for Kim Possible was growing up. This was made 3 years after the premiere, and they would have been craving for more intense action and prettier outfits for Shigo that would push the TVG rating to its breaking point. So the drama was produced as episodes 63 to 65 of the show, which naturally meant that Disney was not willing to make new episodes. But the show proved so popular, and the ending so intoxicating, that a 4th season was eventually commissioned around a year later. And this time, everything was different.
Oh, I'm on a team, that's cool. Okay, how about you water skiing over a shark? Hello?
Okay, not everything. After Draken's released from jail, the tone of the series goes almost back to normal, alien hijinks notwithstanding. I get the impression that this is the most controversial season within the core Kim Possible fanbase, some really liking it and others really hating it, but I largely felt like it did the show a good send-off. I don't know about the new mission outfit though. Kim and Ron are now dating as seniors, but Ron will still act like a total goofus. It's never to the point where I can't understand why they're still dating, but it's clear they were pushing the limits of how spontaneous he can be. A couple other changes include Ron getting a job at Smarty Mart, a new baby sister called Hannah, who's a baby in a cartoon so they're strong and that's so adorable, isn't it? And Monkey Fist just flat out dies. He's a statue now, show's over, go home. The Tweebs have moved up to high school grades and now hang around Middleton High with Kim. Their voice actors were replaced with younger sounding kids, which is a little ironic, but what can you hiccup-do? A big change, however, was the introduction of an alien race, appearing partway through the season, then in the finale. This is the one change where I'm confused why they did it, because it's a bit strange to me when a show drops aliens into it after a couple seasons. But to be fair, they needed a big wrap-up that sent the characters somewhere new, and most would be too busy celebrating their graduation to care that much about this cartoon not being realistic. Now that you know that I like the whole show, here's my 10 favourite episodes, which is surprisingly pretty balanced from season to season. Emotion Commotion sees the Kim and Ron relationship start to really blossom, but only because Kim has this chip in the back of her neck that causes her to change emotions all the time. It's a really strange episode, but I do really like the jokes and drama they make out of it, especially on Shigo's end, that stuff is just the bomb. Sink or Swim does an excellent service to campy teen horror movies. Camp Wanna Weep is a great name for a camp, and a spooky place in general with a hefty amount of surprises. Coach Possible has a pretty decent A-plot with Kim being a bit too tough of a coach, but the B-plot with Junior wanting to create an evil disco party is something else. A very weird and funny plot you can still take with a grain of seriousness. Motorhead is our introduction to the character, and although his world isn't my favourite, I really liked seeing it in this episode. Very grungy and dirty, but it's clearly a man's plane of reality. This was also the introduction of Felix, and I've already praised his role and what he delivers. This is a great time all around. Bonding is the old cuffed together plot, only Kim and Bonnie get attached at the hip, and Ron and Barker are stuck together too. We get to see more of their lives, why Bonnie's a bit of a thorn to Kim, and Barker's amazing life outside the high school. Naked Genius is about Rufus becoming hyper-intelligent and helping Ron become a mathematics scientist. It's a funny idea with a good message to never fake your work, something that's important to learn in high school. Go Team Go reveals what Shigo's family is like, very powerful but very disconnected since she turned to evil. The bonding's great while it lasts, and then we get one of the best fight scenes of the show. Exchange sees the beginning of the Yuri arc, and one of Ron's most awesome adventures. He truly can stand on his own in a battle, and he truly can transform into a Japanese drawing of himself. Rappin' Draken is weird, corny, and absurd, and that's just how I like it. This is one of the last episodes set before So the Drama, so why not really test how crazy we can make a Draken episode? Have him sing karaoke, rap about a mind-controlling shampoo, then have Ron save the day by rapping about Rufus. Just a stunning 22 minutes. My favourite episode is Odds Man In, just a brilliant way to show the opposing attributes of Kim and Ron. His father's an actuary, so of course he'll have this freak out where he's afraid of worst case scenarios and forget the thrill and importance of taking risks. It's really important for his character development, and the subplot about Draken selling cupcakes is it's a blast too. Those episodes are pretty great examples of KP, but these are 5 that made me feel like this show couldn't do everything. Team Impossible shows off the team the mayor originally tried to email all those years ago, and they're greedy knobs who didn't need a whole story. At least we finally got to see Wade leave his room. That was a pivotal moment that increases the episode's worth. Return to Camp Wannaweep failed to really engross me in the Gil saga again. It's mostly just a mean, boring summer camp episode. Again, I think the climax is interesting, but not much else. Royal Pain has it all in the title. A snooty European prince comes to Middleton High, makes life difficult for Kim and Ron for a few days, then leaves the show without a trace. It isn't very funny or memorable, and is my least favourite full-length episode. There are 2 11-minute episodes that I think are worse though. Adventures in Rufus Sitting for being a mindless romp that doesn't make a lick of sense, and Chasing Rufus for being a mindless romp that doesn't make a lick of sense and prominently featuring this ugly sphinx. These bottom 3 aren't heinous, but they're definitely skippable. But hey, the other 80-odd adventures are a pretty good time. I apologise if I skipped over an episode, character, or story that you liked. It's just the trouble I have with reviewing big, arc-heavy action shows such as this. And if you were to ask me about it, I'm sure I'd like it. Kim Possible is an excellent show, and a prime example of a very well-balanced action comedy cartoon. Maybe it's just the rose-tinted glasses that have been prescribed to me by Disney Channel, but there's barely anything that I dislike here. It pretty much had its own generation of Disney fans to enthrall, coming right as One Saturday Morning ended, and ending right as Phineas and Ferb started. It's a window into a very specific time frame for the studio, but it's one I'll call and be back to for many years to come. Goodbye for now.
Coming up next, My Little Pony.
Please, every pony, stand back.